All right, so now we're going to put what we've learned together. So this is just a little piece I've whipped up. It says, "You are my sunshine." I'm going to put a sun in the middle, but we're not going to worry about that right now. Right now, we're just going to focus on the word sunshine and putting together the back stitch, the lazy daisy, perhaps, and the French knot for the dot of the I. So this way I can show you what I like to do when I'm stitching lettering. So I've got my needle threaded. I've got a knot in the end. So I'm going to come up. You can start on either end of the S here. I'm going to start on the bottom. And you want to make sure that your stitches are fairly small and nice and even. The smaller stitches, they look better, they work better. I don't always follow that rule, but it's because I sometimes lack the patience. But it's always good practice to make the stitches as even as you can. Now, that doesn't mean you need to get a ruler out and make sure each stitch is 1/4 of an inch exactly, but just kind of the more you embroider, the more comfortable you'll become with the different stitches and with a stitch length that works for you. And it might vary depending on the project. So then I'm going to go back down just a normal stitch. Now here's where I'm going to do, and I missed the line, but it's okay. Here's where I'm going to do my lazy daisy stitch. And I'm going to come up here around the curve of the S, and I'm going to go back down in the hole from the other stitch. Now you're going, hey, wait a second, when you did the lazy daisy stitch earlier, you went up and down the same hole. And yes, that's correct. Good observation. But for this particular instance, this is how I'm going to do it. So now I have this big U shape. So I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to put it where I want the bottom of the S to be. Sure, that works. I'm going to pull it up, pull the loop around it. See, that's going to be a nice S. And then you'll go down on the other side of the thread. Again, making sure you're on the other side so the loop will hold. And there's my S. Awesome. So now I'm going to continue with the back stitch for the section. So I'll go up, and then I'll go down, and then I will go up and back down that same hole from the previous stitch. I'm using my fingers on the back end of my project just to kind of make sure the thread isn't getting in knots. Knots are my worst enemy, so it's a good time. So then here what we're gonna do, I'm gonna do one more stitch and then we're gonna do that other lazy daisy ish stitch. So I made my one stitch. So I'm going to continue as if I were doing a back stitch. So I'm gonna go here, up, and back down over here. This time we're making like a rainbow, like a nice little arc. And we're going to put our needle through the top of the S where we want the top of the S to be and pull it tight so it's holding the loop. And then you're going to go down the same hole, making sure we're on the other side of the thread. I'm going to go down. Ready? And there's our S. I'm going to skip ahead for now to the I so I can show you the French knot. Now, you could also do like I've done here and do a little X for the I. That's kind of cute. But for this particular project, I'm going to use a French knot. I think for me personally, I would do an X, but French knots just don't always work for me, so that's why that's my preference. But we'll do a French knot here, and we'll see how this works out. So you can see I just did back stitch. Okay, now that's not very straight because I was talking and not looking at my stitching. So what I'm going to do is I just unthreaded my needle and I'm going to unpick those 2 stitches I just did. Using my needle to get under there, it's a lot easier than trying to pinch at it with my fingers. This is, yeah, that's the easiest way I've found. Only problem is then you have to rethread your needle, which, depending on the thread, the needle, the project, isn't always a fun time, but you know, it works. So now I've got my needle threaded and I'm gonna try that again. Now, what was my problem? I don't think I had a very straight line drawn there. And again, I wasn't paying the closest of attention to my project. So now we're gonna go back up. We're gonna go back down this same hole here. Then, it's still not great, but we're going to move on with our eye. We're going to come up. Remember how we do our French knots. We're going to wrap it around. For this one, I'm going to do it 2 times. I find 2 is a really good middle ground. It's a really good size. I think anything more than 3 gets to be a bit bulky, but it's a personal preference. Yet again, we're going to hold the thread tight, and there's the dot of my eye. So now you can see my project. I have my S using my back stitch and my lazy daisy-ish stitch, and then I have my eye with the French knot for the dot of the eye. And that's just an example of how these stitches are used in a project.